What's going on, everybody? The Daytona 500 has come and it's gone. Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't. Also, I don't remember what the hell the name of the Xfinity race is, but we're going to talk about that too. It is episode 2, technically episode 2 of the Trophy Hunters podcast, season 2. Joining me as always, he's the man behind the Final Laps podcast. It's Mr. Ryan Young. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Shawn. Doing pretty good. And just for the record, that is the beef. It's what's for dinner 300 on Saturday. On top of our Daytona 500 special we had going on Sunday. So I'm doing good. I'm excited. It was a great weekend. Really couldn't ask for more. Wanted a dub. Didn't quite pull it off. But all in all, really good weekend, I think, for the entire Kaulig organization.
Yeah, I thoroughly thought that it was solid. I think there's some ups. I think there's some downs. I think there's some comments that are made by certain drivers, maybe our guy, that might be a little bit alarming, especially when it comes to a super speedway racetrack. But other than that, man, it's hard to complain too much. I think the one, let me just get the negativity out of the way off the beginning, and I don't think it's his fault at all. I hate it for Chandler Smith. I 100%, I'm going to die on this hill. He was screwed out of any real chance of making the Daytona 500. And yes, I do think he would have at least been right there with Pastrana and Johnson in his qualifying lap. And not to mention, like, you're expected to go turn laps in a race of a car that you've never driven other than in a simulator and in the Kaulig parking lot. And you got to race your way. The deck was stacked against him pretty hard. And all in all, I thought he handled himself very well in the post-race interview. I was kind of annoyed they even put a camera in front of the kid's face, to be honest. But
well, you know what? Those are the perfect moments. Those are the shots, the gotcha shots that every good TV production is looking for. And you know what? You bring up a good point. Obviously, we brought 3 cars to the track. Only 2 made the Daytona 500. So at the end of the day, that is definitely something that I personally didn't expect and was definitely let down by. And I know this has been, beaten to death already over the course of the last couple of days. Just the Daytona 500 is your biggest race of the year. You're bringing in cars that haven't, in teams that haven't raced a full schedule. More often than not, the Daytona 500 is full of one-off opportunities, and you don't have any practice prior to qualifying for the biggest race of the year. Makes no sense. I don't know if that would have completely fixed all of our issues. Chandler still made a mistake during the duel race, where he was speeding on pit road, and the Chevys really screwed up the whole pit sequence and never really gave themselves a shot during the duel. But at the end of the day, the issue that the Kaulig car had there, where it looked like he had a battery issue or there was a bad ground or something that prevented that car from getting up to speed during his qualifying lap, at the end of the day, put him behind the 8 ball that he was never able to recover from. And those sorts of things, especially for an organization that has, expectations of maybe stepping out of that mid-tier, are things that they definitely need to clean up. But at the end of the day, I am really frustrated with NASCAR for not having any practices prior to qualifying, but they had 2 practices after qualifying, after the duels, where nobody even bothered to go out and practice. So they have that completely backwards to me.
yeah, I think I would like to think, anyways, that will be cleaned up as early as the Daytona race in the summer. I would be lying if I sat here and told you I have confidence that that's going to happen. I don't know, man. It just seemed like and that's the thing. It wasn't just the fact that the dude didn't get any practice. It was the fact there was 2 practice sessions after qualifying. I think they got it ass backwards, and sadly, I think Kaulig paid the price for it.
Yeah, they did. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for the team. They definitely dropped the ball, but this was their first 3-car operation at the Cup level. Brand new crew. I don't even know where they got their crew. Maybe it was the Xfinity crew that they brought up. I'm not even 100% sure. But it's a 3rd car obviously the first race of the year, every team's probably going to have a few small hiccups, but there was a lot of expectation, and even in the pre-qualifying, the pre-race guys were really high on Chandler, really high on Kaulig, and being the first car out to qualify, with national television watching, and he can't get the car out of first gear is what it looked like. So that was not a great look for Kaulig right out of the gates. And then to follow that up, the Kaulig cars didn't qualify well. Now, I wasn't expecting that. They've never really qualified well. And really, it doesn't matter where you qualify at Daytona, but they definitely didn't bring their A game during that Wednesday night. So it steamrolled. It steamrolled into the duels. It affected all three cars in the duels. And really, we saw that with how they ended up starting the race 29th and 30th respectively, and one DNQ.
Yeah, it's I didn't want to leave this weekend feeling like the Richard Petty Motorsports days from when AJ was like first getting his feet wet there. When he was in the 44, I know he was in the 10 for Gillette Everham before that. But I don't know. There's something about the DNQ and seeing that happen on track, and it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. And I do think Kaulig has the infrastructure though to overcome this. And yeah, on to the positive shit though. AJ Allmendinger almost won the Daytona 500 after nearly wrecking the entire field. So,
dude, I can tell you right now, my heart was pounding out of my chest. And he kind of did it. Kind of came out of nowhere, really. After I know they did some pit strategy, got themselves some track position, but to go up there, muscle his way to the lead. I mean, he didn't back into it. He didn't get lucky. I mean, he punted a couple drivers out of his way, including Joey Logano, and flat drove by him and took the lead with 12 laps to go, 11 laps to go, whatever it was. I was like, oh my God, we got a chance. And then just as quickly, he fell to about 15th. But that lap and a half was magical. And then caution came out towards the end, got himself lined up in the third row there on the restart, and gave himself a real chance to win the race. And you really can't ask for more. The car was good. The car was really fast when being pushed, and that caution came out. And I understand too. That was a hard wreck. Two cars went nose first into the wall. I know why they threw the yellow. But man, oh man, had they been able to race that thing back around on the final lap, I really think AJ could have won the race. He was the third car in line on the inside that had all the momentum. If they had broken free, he easily could have pulled out and had a real chance to win. That said, sixth place is a damn good start to the year.
absolutely. I think it's hard to ask for much more. Look, I don't know if you remember what I said about a third way through the race. One of our buddies that we do the crossover with, Mike Bish, basically called Allmendinger trash mid chat, and that got some people going. Actually, it was our buddy Reno who came to Digger's defense. I know he's been always secretly a little bit of a Dinger guy. We're all in a fantasy NASCAR GM league together, and I said in the chat, I don't know, man. I just had a feeling. I was just like, they're fine. AJ and Justin are fine. They'll be there when they need to be there at the end. And they were. I mean, Allmendinger was. Haley obviously got. Haley literally got the exact same wreck that Allmendinger got, and almost got out of it cleaner than Allmendinger and overcorrected into the wall. And that was the end of his day, sadly. But I was just really. I'm confident that even though he hates that style racing, if AJ Allmendinger wants to play the long game and be in the top 10 at the end of the super speedway, I don't know if there's a driver I trust more to be there towards the end of the race at a super speedway. He might not win it, but he's probably going to be there. Yeah. And he's shown it not just in Xfinity, but in Cup as well.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if we go back and look at the last 10 years of the 500, and admittedly, there's a 5-year gap there where he wasn't in it, but he was notorious for getting himself third, fifth, seventh. And you know how, especially at Daytona and Talladega, there's usually long stretches where they single file out and they just run an accordion for 50 laps or whatever. And in a lot of those cases, AJ is very good at getting himself into a position in the top 10 where he's always given himself a chance. Now, listen, I'm going to say this probably every single episode. It's going to get repetitive, but going down to the Xfinity series was the best thing that happened to him because it forced him, it allowed him to be competitive, racing in the front 5, 6 cars every single week. And that includes the super speedways, where he had no choice but to learn how to draft and find the right lanes and take the right pushes, which were things I didn't think he was overly good at, in his previous Cup stint. So, I think he took those lessons he learned and really showed out yesterday that, he's more confident. He does take more risks. I know that we can have a conversation about what he did there at the end of stage 1 here in a second, but he's willing to take the risks and do what needs to be done to be competitive at these super speedways. And it wouldn't surprise me if he wins one. Not saying it'll be this year, but over the next couple of years, however many years he's got left, I think he can win a super speedway race because he's got the skills.
He definitely does. I'm trying to pull up the stat here. I wasn't expecting to dive into this necessarily, but I think most of Allmendinger's career, whether it was in the 47, the 44, or the 43, I know the 22 didn't go too well, the Daytona 500 for him, but that dude has been there running top 10 a lot at the end of those races. And I expect really nothing different from him. I thought he was able to get up there at the end of stage 2 and get himself some points. I've seen a couple of the post-race interviews he's done, and one of the things he said was when he wanted to, he was able to get the car up to the front, but it just didn't have the speed to be out front. He could get up there, but he couldn't stay up there. And on one hand, that's great that that he knew when he needed to, he could go up there. It would take time, obviously more time than it did back in the day. But it's still a little concerning to hear a driver say in a team that's supposed to be pretty competitive, I don't have enough speed on a super speedway track. I'm going to be circling that one for the next 10 weeks and hope that I'm not reading too much into it.
Yeah, honestly, I think you might be. And I'm going to say this. The reason I say that is because, and this is not a Kaulig thing, this is not an AJ Allmendinger thing, it's not a Justin Haley thing. Every single super speedway race, even with the cars in the top 5, top 10, you hear, over the scanners, I'm a good pusher, or I'm better at getting pushed, I'm better at leading the draft. And depending on how you set your car up aerodynamically, some cars are better pushers and some cars are better leaders. And there was no doubt, we saw it when AJ got sucked up behind somebody Sunday. He was able to get under somebody's nose and he was able to push. He was an excellent pusher. So the fact that he had that ability, the car was set up well enough to do that, to me gives me the confidence in saying, sure, a few minor tweaks here, maybe a few adjustments there, and they can switch it around, and that car might be better in the streamline out front. But they clearly had the capacity to push the best of the best. And that to me is an indication of a car that's good enough to win. They weren't trimmed out to be in front, but they were certainly trimmed correctly in that draft and they pushed well. And truthfully, Justin Haley as well. I mean, I want to give Justin Haley a shout out. He finished 32nd. It was, when you look at the number, he didn't perform well. But if you actually watch, especially in stage 2, in a track, in a race that was really hard to pass, and I can't emphasize that enough, with this new car, with the way they have so much drag, they can't really go 3 wide anymore. They need to figure that out. So it's you're 2 lanes, you're stuck where you are. Haley did a really good job of working his way up naturally into the top 10. Obviously, he got wrecked. He got swept up in a big one and didn't get the result. But he had a really fast race car too, and he really did show it earlier than AJ did.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that I think Kaulig needs to look at, and I know they've approached their Cup Series tracks like this the last couple of years when they've been on them, is they like to hang back and try to avoid the big one and then be there at the end. The problem with that is you need stage points. Unless you intend to win one of these races, you desperately need stage points. And even if you do win one of these races, you need stage points. And not to mention, the road courses are going to be a little more tricky this year, which I completely disagree with. But that's another story for another episode. I thought they played it too safe. Allmendinger got up there and really mixed it up at the end of both stages. Right before the end of stage one, he did that move that we're about to talk about in a second. And then at the end of stage two, he literally went from about 20th to 6th or 7th in 4 or 5 laps. And that's without being able to be 3 wide. 3 wide barely happened on Sunday. And if it did, it was for a couple of rows, and they figured out really quickly, no, we're going to wreck the field if we do this. And they quit doing it. And it was never towards the front either.
Right. It was always 10 rows back. And there's the desperation, right? Because these guys that were running 20th on back realized they weren't going anywhere. And I guess I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think they planned to fall back. And really, they didn't fall below where they qualified. At no point did they go all the way to the back of the pack. It was just hard to pass. So they were kind of ebbing and flowing and running around 20th there during the early stages of the race. Until they were able to use some of their strategies. And, obviously a few wrecks didn't hurt, and they were able to finally kind of break through into the top 15. And then once they were there, they were competitive. But it wasn't from a lack of them saying, hey, we need to play it safe. I think they realized they had to get to the front. It's hard to do.
I agree to that to an extent, and I wasn't listening to the radios. I don't do that on super speedways, nor do I watch the in-car cam, because it's like, what the hell am I seeing other than a car right in front of me? So, but and then with the spotters, that's all you hear is the spotters on a super speedway. Fuck listening to the in-car radio for them. Just watch the actual, broadcast when we're not cutting to commercial for 75% of the race. But that being said, I just felt like AJ could go and make moves better than Haley, and I think Justin Haley's actually a better super speedway racer than AJ Allmendinger, but maybe not in Cup. I don't know. He just wasn't able. I guarantee you, I'm sure someone has the stat somewhere, some crazy stat nut, that Allmendinger passed way more cars on Sunday than Justin Haley did.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I also found Allmendinger used the bottom a lot, and Haley was almost always up towards the wall every time I see him.
I agree. I mean, AJ was more confident, definitely going side to side, in and out, and blocking. And let's now segue with that block into maybe the move of the race. I'm going to call it the move of the race, because he flat out pissed off the entire field, including one Ryan Blaney, who was swearing up a storm at him. Listen, we're going to talk about this today, next week, week after. The pit crews have to step up if we're going to make the playoffs and have a deep run in the playoffs. And on the first pit stop of the race, they dropped a lug nut. AJ had a long pit stop. He lost the draft.
There's only one of them.
I know. I don't know how it happens.
Drop that. I'm sorry. I'm a bus driver, okay? I'm not a pit crew guy. I don't know how hard it is. When there was 5, I got it. There's fucking 1, and you cost your driver a lap on the first pit stop of the year. Could not have started worse for what is already the team's biggest weakness, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it damn near cost them. It did cost them. Let's call it what it is. They lost a lap, and AJ said, fuck it. I'm going to stick my car in front of the entire field, and they best pick me up. Otherwise we're wrecking. Because he knew, especially because 2 laps left in stage 1, that if he didn't catch the draft and get a position, he wasn't going to be the lucky dog. And at that point, you're a lap down. You're fighting an uphill battle the rest of the day. And he did what he had to do. He got in line. He was able to pick up the draft, and then promptly, and again, this was the first sign to me that I knew we had a good car. He promptly dove to the low line and passed about 6 cars in one corner, including Bubba Wallace, who he had to beat for the lucky dog, and he did it easily. So at the end of the day, it was the right move, because it paid off. He didn't wreck anybody, and he ruffled some feathers, But in this year, this era of NASCAR, you can't give a fuck. You have to be so aggressive if you're going to win these races.
So one of the guys in our group chat that we're doing the NASCAR pool with keeps going on about it's the Harvick I don't give a fuck tour. It's the Harvick I don't give a fuck tour because it's his last year and he's just gonna why should he take any prisoners? And that's cool. And I get it. We're gonna hear a lot about that because Kevin Harvick's a more popular driver than AJ Allmendinger, rightfully so. If you don't think AJ Allmendinger is gonna race that way all this year and for however much time he has left, you're out of your mind. The guy has nothing to lose. He's rejuvenated his career. He's solid financially. I, pardon the term here, but have you seen the dude's wife? She does okay for herself too. He has no reason to not go out there and be like, fuck it. If I piss you off, I piss you off. I'm sure he didn't want to do that, but he probably would have got the laps back at some point, but would he have gotten those stage points in stage 2? Probably not. And because the wrecks didn't really start to happen till in and around that time, slowly after that. But it's also like, you have to. You're not driving a Hendrick car. You're not driving Gibbs. Yeah. And as close as these things are now, there's been an entire offseason. How much did Kaulig lose, if any? And, he's making up for someone else's blunder again. And not think about it this way. Someone else's blunder, again, I know it's pit stop 1. I'm not saying I could do it better. Anyone listen to this, calm down. Okay. I'm not saying I could. I'm simply saying you can't fucking have those things consistently happen. And then you have a guy literally put his life, and I don't feel bad saying this, on the line by pulling up in front of a 200-mile-an-hour pack coming at him in a car that's considered to be maybe not the most safe. And he still did it anyway for the good of the team.
Yep. Yeah, if there's any doubt that AJ is here to play, he did it at the Clash. He also gave Chase Briscoe a piece of his mind. Now he's done it at Daytona. It's clear to me AJ has made the decision that he's all in. He's going to do what he has to do. And listen, there's going to be times when AJ makes mistakes and the pit crew is going to have to pick him up, and it's a two-way street. I get that. But it does seem like AJ definitely seems to have to make up for pit road mistakes more often than not. And again, you have to do it. You have to. There's no options in today's era. Everybody's running within a tenth of each other. And you know what? I'm going to call out Ryan Blaney here because he was the most adamant on the radios. What does he do? End of stage 2 does the exact same thing. He throws a block on the entire field as they were merging back in, after the green flag pit stops. And he said, I had to do what I had to do. Well, there you go. Not 30 minutes prior, he was giving AJ the business and then turns around and does the same thing. And I don't fault the guy, right? You have to. You literally have to if you want to maintain your track position and give yourself the best chance to win.
Sorry, I was just reading the other YouTube thing. Something big just dropped. So, anyway, he has to play that way. You're gonna piss people off, and us Allmendinger fans are gonna have to endure people calling him shit on live broadcast until he proves them otherwise. Your goal is to make the playoffs. You can't have a 7 or 8 week stretch if you don't win this year. You can't have a 7 or 8 week stretch of all I did was finish 21st to 33rd, or there will not be a playoff. I thoroughly enjoyed it. At the end of the day, the Cup Series, other than Chandler Smith, man, I was happy. Ricky Stenhouse wins, which, is cool for him. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about that team and or organization. And from what I understand, they were lucky to be still in the sport next season. They're one of the teams that was heavily rumored to be possibly shopping the charter. Could still happen. But Ricky Stenhouse is a hell of a super speedway racer. I would never say otherwise. And kudos to him. It goes to show that you do not have to race for Hendrick or Gibbs or Penske in order to win the big one.
Yep. Listen, I don't have any ill will towards JTG Dogtree Racing. I know AJ's time there didn't end well, but I think that was mutually understood that they weren't where they needed to be. AJ wasn't in the right mind space. And they brought in a guy in Ricky who also gives zero fucks and is an excellent super speedway racer. And he did what he had to do. So good kudos to them. But now, during our last crossover episode, we all predicted the playoffs, right? We all did a 16-team playoff prediction. Not a single one of us had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the playoffs. So right out of the gate,
All wrong.
it's week one, but now we've got a winner that we didn't anticipate to win. When you do the calculus of how many drivers are going to win a race this year, here's one right out of the gate that nobody expected to win. So now we're off to the races of, all right, how many more of these guys are going to win races and how many guys are going to win, and are they even going to be able to point your way into the playoffs? And I do think you will, but that's right out of the gate, one slot gone that probably wasn't anticipated of making the playoffs. So I know it's early, but this is the stuff that you got to track. And as you said, no bad weeks, no lulls, no 2 or 3 weeks stretches where you don't finish in the top 20, because you will find yourself out very quickly.
Yeah, like even now he's only got a 10-point cushion on his playoff spot, AJ, that is. So looking forward to Auto Club, man, for them. I had forgotten that actually, hang on, before we go to Auto Club, let's go through these quotes really quickly. AJ said, I'm really pleased with the finish we had. Anytime you get a start to the season with a top 10 in the Daytona 500, it's a big deal. I felt like our car handled very well. It was just tough racing. That was very track position oriented. When we got up front, we just lacked a little bit of speed to stay up there. That was the toughest thing. Overall, our guys did a great job and fought hard throughout the day. You just have to be there at the end. We had a shot to win the Daytona 500. That's pretty friggin' cool. I wish we could have done it, but all you can ask for is having a real opportunity, and we did tonight. That's pretty special. Again, though, the speed thing's glaring. He made sure to emphasize that. I don't think that's done, accidentally. I think he's letting you know that, hey, we're there, but we need to be able to make the pass on the last lap. We're not going to lead the last 3 or 4 laps of Daytona, and not many people do, to be clear.
Yeah. I was just about to say, honestly, I don't think you want to be the leader on the last lap. So, but yeah, I understand what they're saying. He went from the lead to the 15th as soon as he fell out. It's a big deal. They got to get better there for sure.
Justin Haley had this to say about the Daytona 500. We had a great run there for a while. We were unfortunately just caught up in what was ultimately just one of those green-white checkered deals that are inevitable at super speedways. We struggled a little bit all weekend. The package is pretty tough to pass with, but it was fun to be up there battling in the top 10 there for a bit. So, I mean, not the most positive of takes from Haley in his post race interview, but all in all, man, I love this organization, and I thought that Daytona was a mixed bag. I thought we didn't start poorly, but didn't start good either. I thought it was a mixed bag. AJ obviously carried his personal team anyway to a 6th place finish, and I think that's good. On the Xfinity side, I got to tell you, man, I watched the race and I didn't see much. They seemed like they could get up there, but they just ran out of time. They had no time to do it. Again, one of those cases where you can play it safe at the towards the end, but caution fests happen, and you might not get a chance to make your moves when you need to make them. And that's what happened. I just hate it for Chandler because I think Chandler had a much better car than a 12th place car.
Yeah. So I had watched the race highlights. I was out and about on Saturday, so I didn't get to watch the race live. But I did go back and watch the truncated version. And all in all, the results didn't really show the speed that the team had. Haley, for some reason, didn't qualify well. I think he qualified 17th or 18th, but within a couple laps had worked his way into the top 10. He had a rocket ship. Him and Chandler, and hell, even Hemrick. I mean, Hemrick is kind of like the what if situation. He was wrecked out, nothing he could do. He was just driving his lane, and somebody turned into his door and took him out. So we don't know how good his race could have or would have been, but he had speed. He was running top 6 or so, 7 or so when that happened. But what we saw at the end of stage 1 was Chandler Smith and Justin Haley tag up together, run nose to tail on the high line, and they were fast. I mean, Austin Hill was pretty unbeatable. He probably had the best car. And Chandler's experience probably cost him a stage 1 victory. Austin kind of outfoxed him just a little bit there at the end and got the stage point, but a P2 for Chandler is a great start. They did venture back in stage 2. I don't know if that was by choice or if they just got shuffled out and nobody ran super well in stage 2. But the turning point of that race for me was I don't remember whose wreck it was. It might have been Sheldon Creed's wreck, and Justin Haley was part of it. He got hit in the rear quarter, was able to continue, was able to move forward, but the car didn't quite have the same speed in it after that contact, and that kind of ruined his race a little bit. I just don't think they was able to do much more with that. And Chandler had plenty of speed, almost too much speed. And the one thing about the Xfinity series, they do get strung out. They will idiotically run in a train the final 50 laps of the race and only make a move with 2 laps to go. And as you said, it wasn't really a caution fest until the very end, and they kind of got caught out a little bit, and they couldn't move forward. But Chandler was trying to move forward. I don't know if he saw that, but he ventured out of line of 2 or 3 times because he had a run. He wanted to make a pass, and nobody went with him, and he fell back. And that inexperience, he'll learn from that. He'll get better from that. The car had speed. He made a few mistakes that kind of cost him the finishing position at the end. But at the end of the day, 10th place and 12th place, and Chandler Smith is 5th place in points. So definitely not the race I think we all wanted to see, but it was good enough. They stayed out of trouble.
So I don't want this to turn into the rumor podcast, especially when I don't necessarily trust where it's coming from. All I'm going to say is this. Sorry, kids downstairs. I hear them. I got to wonder, and this is moving back to staying with Xfinity. A little birdie told me that we might not see Landon Castle in that car at all this year. And you might notice things have gone like literally silent. There's not even a reference to him on Kaulig since this has been announced. I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know. I imagine it's nothing Landon's done. But it could be, hey, if you don't have money, you can't get in the car.
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of the pay-to-play structure, but it seems that, from the perspective of you don't have the money, therefore you're not going to get to drive the car. Had there been a different kind of relationship, perhaps they could have put him in the race for, a couple races. But it just seems like when they decided to make that break, they completely cut the cord and said, thank you for your time, Landon. I hope you land on your feet, but it's not going to be with us. Because you're right. There's no references to him on the website, no sponsors, nothing that indicates he's going to be in that car. And now with the amount of Cup drivers that's already been committed to driving that car, it's definitely looking less and less. But at the end of the day, they do still need to find someone to drive 11 races that's not a Cup driver. So we'll see who they end up putting in the car for that.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see who ends up getting those races for sure. And do we know when the first one of those races is, by the way?
It's not too far.
Dash, right? Which is
it's April. I think it's in April, maybe late March. They're pretty early in the year, so they are actually around the corner.
That is like, I know we're back on the Landon Castle beat, and I don't want to mention the guy's name on here. We know him, and he's pretty good with NASCAR stuff. But he had mentioned that he didn't think Landon was going to be back in the car, and one of the reasons could be like every car costs something. If there's a team that has you could go drive if you have your license and sponsorship right now. You could go drive for Joe Gibbs more than likely if you can prove that you're a decent driver and have loads of money to go get in one of those Xfinity cars. But there's a big difference between getting in a competitive ride and getting in a non-competitive Xfinity ride. Like the non-competitive Xfinity ride, you're not winning anything in that unless everybody wrecks out. You're not even sniffing a top 10 in those things.
Yeah, they're slow. There's a huge gap of quality in the Xfinity series, and sure, there are a few random examples. I mean, Jeremy Clements pulling one out last year, but even him, even that car is a top 20 car at best, week in and week out. So at the end of the day, I'm assuming Landon will drive something somewhere, but it's probably not with Kaulig. And I will say this. I mean, again, it's Tuesday, but we just looked at the entry list and we see Austin Dillon is driving that number 10 car, but there's no associated sponsor. So I don't know what that means. Are they going to put the Kaulig companies on the side of the car, or is there going to be a local brand that steps up? But the fact that, let's assume for a second that it's going to be a Kaulig company's branded car and Austin Dillon is the driver, that really says to me that sorry, Landon, there's just no room for you at the end. We're going to self-fund it, and we're going to put the guys in it we want to.
If it's a blue and white car for either of those cars that takes the track in any of these races, to me, you're never seeing Landon again on this team. I hope that's not the case. It's not meant to be like, hey, Landon's a bad guy. We're just speculating about silly season stuff that with this team is going to go on all year, really, with that third car. So, and you'll notice that on the graphic I just had up, instead of them listing 3 Xfinity drivers because they can't, they have a new column so you can watch where that 10 car is in the owner standings. I think they look at that 10 car and go, we can go win an owner's championship. Who can we get in that car?
Yep, absolutely. I had the exact same thought as soon as I saw that graphic, that it is clear to me that 10 car.
Why go out of your way to even put that on? There is no need to put that on the graphic. They've literally never done it, ever.
Yeah, that car is going to be there every single week. No question.
Yeah,
no question.
I'm really curious to see how Austin Dillon does this weekend, and it's going to be good stuff. I'm trying to think if we have anything else, man. Do you have anything that you want to touch here in the closing 5 minutes or so?
I really don't. I really was overall pleased with how the team raced. I mean, it's always a crapshoot when you go to these super speedways, and I saw exactly kind of what I expected to see. They didn't qualify well, very conservative during the duels, raced their way to the front, and all 5 cars raced to the top 10 pretty easily. And AJ got the result he deserved, and everybody else kind of didn't finish where they probably should have. But I thought it was a really strong opening weekend for the team. But I think we'll really know where we stand across the spectrum this week as we get to Auto Club Speedway in California, where the real season starts. And I made this comment on the Kaulig Nation Facebook page. These next 3 weeks are going to tell the story, because we've got California, then we've got Las Vegas, and then we've got Phoenix. And at the end of those 3 races,
spoiler alert: if you're expecting much at Phoenix, you should not. They've not given a shred of evidence that they are any good in any series there. Pray to God that Richard Childress feels bad for them and says, this is what we're using on one of our cars. Maybe start with that as a baseline, because they really miss on those tracks.
Well, to be fair, AJ did finish 12th at Phoenix to end the year in the Cup car. Mm-hmm. So I'm not expecting top. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say they need to give
2 tires stop late.
Yeah, they don't need to win. They don't need top 5s. But if we can sneak out some top 10s, top 15s consistently, and more importantly, looking at that point standings, if AJ, specifically AJ, because he's already in the green, but even Justin Haley, but at the end of this West Coast swing, if AJ is still in the top 16 in points and Justin Haley has made a dent in his hole, maybe into the top 25 in points, I'm going to feel good about where we stand. These 3 weeks are going to tell us a good, the story if we have a playoff caliber team or not. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do expect them to run well. Maybe Phoenix isn't going to be the best result, but I have high expectations that they come out to play, and I think AJ is going to get at least 2 top 10s over the next 3 races.
Yeah, I think another fun thing to do here as we get ready, I want to preview Auto Club. Actually, let's stick with Auto Club here. Let me get back on track for a second. So last year, Daniel Hemrick at Auto Club. Have I really lost it again? I have. Okay, so Daniel Hemrick at Auto Club qualified 5th. That's an actual qualifying lap. That wasn't no draw thing. He qualified 5th. The car had speed. Stage 1, 35th. Stage 2, 33rd. Final stage, 9th. There was a shifter problem. They somehow went 6 laps down at Auto Club and came all the way back to finish on the lead lap with speed. I can assure you that may never happen again for anybody, possibly. 6 laps down at Auto Club and you get them all back. That's insanity. I do wonder, I think some of them, now that I remember it, I couldn't remember they raced there, but didn't they start to have some flat tire issues at that track? The tires were going flat, and they couldn't get the cars off the track. They were stuck.
Yeah, there are one or two examples of that. Yeah. I think they've got the tire situation more or less figured out now. I mean, we didn't see any at Daytona, but yeah, they had a couple flats that caused some drivers to get stuck. But more importantly, and we talked about this during the pre-show, lots of spins, lots of loosey goosey, very dangerous cars on edge that spun out or backed themselves into the fence, and at a super speedway like California, where it's going to be very high G's, loads in the corners, I think we're going to see a lot more cars go for loops and wrecks, and it's going to be a pretty wild weekend if I had to predict it.
Yeah, and I think the results last year, even though Haley didn't perform the best, he was kind of a little under average. The fact that 16 team had the speed it did lets you know that there's some notes to reference on previous performance. And that's really, think about it this way. If AJ is having any issues replicating what Hemrick did, you still have Hemrick in the stable to be like, hey, this is what I was doing last year. So something that he may want to lean on if he has to. But again, I think good, realistic expectations is important for following this team. This is not Hendrick Motorsports. It's not Penske. It's not Joe Gibbs. To me, you're probably looking at top 15 this weekend. If you can finish somewhere in the top 15, you should be happy. There's certainly the potential for more when you look at the results from last year, but I think a good baseline goal is to go out there and say, hey, let's try to get a top 15 and go from there. And that's where my expectation is. And same thing for Vegas. Like, I don't know how they ran at Vegas last year, but you got to hope that they can run inside the top 15 at tracks like this. And they definitely were at the end of last year with their performances at Homestead and other tracks of that nature, Homestead, Texas, etc. But I do think that there's a reason to believe at least the next 2 weeks they should be at least competitive.
Yeah. And again, last year is last year, but I mean, if anything translates, they were very, very good at the 1.5 miles. Pretty good, obviously, as you just talked about it at California. That should continue. I don't see why it wouldn't. The cars haven't changed a lot from last year, setup wise. So I mean, those notes should be valid. And if it has anywhere close to the speed that Hemrick had, I think there's reasonable expectation that AJ can wheel it to equal and or better results. So again, I agree with you. I don't want to get too high up, or too low throughout the season, but I really think the next 2 weeks should be good for AJ in particular. I'm curious to see where Justin runs. I expect him to be a little bit better now that he's got some experience under his belt. So top 15 is kind of my floor for the next 2 weeks. I think there's that should be the expectation, and realistically, top 10s are on the table.
Yeah, top 15 is my expectation. If the guys finish 17th and 19th, I'm not going to hate it. You could have a worse day. I think you want to definitely be in the top 20, worst case scenario. I think you have a good chance at top 15. I'm not saying AJ can't go out there and perform like he did at Homestead and be running top 5 most of the race. He very well could. I just need to see if there was any fall off in the off season. We don't really know these cars yet. Maybe there was gains. Who knows? I guess we'll find out soon. Before we get off, fun little game here, dude. Quickly look at who's in the playoffs right now and tell me, out of all those guys, who you could see out of the playoffs, how many of them, and how many of the guys that are currently out of the playoffs you could see in the playoffs. And then from that, you might be able to get an idea how good of a chance Allmendinger and Haley have.
Yeah. Well, right out of the gate, Travis Pastrana will not be in the playoffs. He's riding there at 16th, so you count him out. But just quickly looking at it, I think there's room for 4 or 5 cars. The bottom 13 through 16 could all miss the playoffs, and I think Chris Buescher up there in third, if he's inconsistent, he could be out as well. So I would say there's probably at least 5 cars, maybe 6, that could not make the playoffs that are in right now. So, with that said, I think that's good wiggle room for AJ already. As I said, he's got a nice little 10-point cushion to start, and see if he can't build from there.
Yeah, I look at Chris Buescher, pardon me, to a lesser extent Kevin Harvick, but those Fords were strong at the super speedways. That doesn't mean their package at the other tracks are good though. Brad Keselowski is one I would watch for. Daniel Suarez, even though he's on my team. Basically, everybody Suarez down could easily be out. Even Keselowski down could easily be out. Although I wouldn't be shocked to see a guy like Buescher make it. And then you got Kyle Larson. He's going to be there. Danny Hamlin's going to be there. Kyle Busch is going to be there. Chase Elliott's going to be there. William Byron's going to be there. So you got 5, in my opinion, almost lock-ins that are going to move over to that side. So you need to move 5 guys out. And then who's the next most likely guy to get in? I'd probably bet Ty Gibbs or Justin Haley.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think is definitely the pecking order of where they are organizationally. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Brad, I do think RFK, at least one of those cars makes the field. But yeah, you could definitely make cases for both RFK cars, 12th on down, even AJ. I mean, homerism aside, I mean, if he does make the playoffs, it's probably going to be in the lower third of the bracket. So, there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows throughout the season. And a driver, I don't see his name on this list. Maybe I'm just missing it. But Eric Jones, that guy's got a real chance of making the playoffs too. So it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a real dogfight to get in. This is the most competitive stretch of NASCAR I've ever seen.
It's going to be something else. Anyways, Auto Clubs this weekend, people. Check it out. Be on the lookout for our next episode sometime probably next Wednesday. We'll probably, if Ryan's okay with it, we might try to distribute Wednesdays, hump days. That way we get to do the race recap and race preview heading into the next weekend. Anyways, though, for Ryan, I'm Shawn. Don't forget to check us out at our social media platforms at Yount Racing 45 for Ryan, Trophy Hunter Pod for myself. If you're into movies or gaming or TV shows or any of that fandom stuff, horror stuff, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, you name it, check us out over at Fandom Empire. Ryan, what else you got going on, man?
Just real quick, we got our new Instagram page up that's also called Trophy Hunters Pod. So come give us a follow on that platform. I'm going to try to do little reels of these shows, just some snippets. So check us out over there. And of course, our Facebook pages, Kaulig Nation, Dinger Nation, and always a quick shout out to our friends at Chandler Smith Fans as well. And then just real quick, shout out Action Industries. Thank you for the hat.
Where's my hat?
I know Sean's jealous. He's
begged me for how long and stuff, and you didn't give me a hat.
Sorry, man.
Not you. Action Industries. I wanted you guys on the hauler. Come on.
USA.
Yeah, trust me. I got snow outside my window that I don't want to deal with right now. So, anyways, that's going to do it for us. Auto Club's up next. Don't forget to put a smile on that face. Let's go trophy hunting, everybody. Have a great week.
See y'all soon.